Hello and welcome back to the show. Today with us, we have Sophie Barrett, and Sophie Barrett studied herbal medicine and naturopathy at the College of Naturopathic Medicine in London, gaining over 5 years of clinical training and research, and having learned healing traditions from around the world and realizing the real importance of living in harmony with nature. She went on to set up her own practice, which I'll link below, sharingplantwisdom.com. And she also is a mycotherapy advisor for Hifas da Terra, which in the UK and Ireland, which we'll touch on a little bit and speak about a bit. But Sophie's on the show today, really just to tell us a bit more about medicinal mushrooms just for women's health. And we can kind of speak about a range of different issues. But yeah, I think firstly, welcome to the show, Sophie.
Thank you so much. Thank you. It's really great to be here and to be able to kind of talk more about the world of medicinal mushrooms. I know it's very much a trending subject at the moment, and I'm delighted to have been consulting with Hifas da Terra for nearly 2 years now, and then, as you say, have my own practice as a medical herbalist. And it's so brilliant to be able to integrate the medicinal mushrooms into my own practice. They work so well alongside the herbs.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I think, yeah, it's definitely a trending topic at the moment. And I guess, how did you branch into the mushroom side of things and within your studies?
It's quite a personal story, actually, because I was diagnosed with skin cancer aged about 35, I think. And at that time, I'm 42 now, so I just started training as a medical herbalist. And I was, as luck would have it, seeing an amazing medical herbalist who trained under a French school of endocrinology and plant medicine. And he really took me under his wings and helped me with tinctures, herbal tinctures, alongside reishi. So I'll be talking a lot about reishi, Ganoderma lucidum. So that's the first time I started taking medicinal mushrooms myself. And as lots of people know, if you get a cancer diagnosis, it can be quite scary, quite frightening. So the reishi really helped calm my emotional state, allowed me to get good sleep, and then had all of these amazing knock-on effects, which I'll talk about a lot, because reishi really is the medicinal mushroom that we turn to for women's health, for stress, for anxiety, for sleep, and then lots of other things. So I started taking reishi aged 35, and then we did integrate some medicinal mushrooms into our diploma at CNM. And then I was kind of brought into the Hifas da Terra fold because a lady there had worked with me actually in Thailand, in Asia, where we were also using a lot of medicinal mushrooms for immune support. And I just learned so much. So it kind of just all happened naturally. Yeah.
Wow, that's such an inspiring story. I mean, firstly, I'm so sorry to hear about that diagnosis, but also so glad that you found a pathway. And then it's obviously something that you're clearly so passionate about, with that personal tie as well. So I think, that's super, super amazing and inspiring. And kind of building on that, how can these, you kind of mentioned it a little bit there, but how can these medicinal mushrooms support women's health in general then?
Yeah, so there's so many different ways. They have this very holistic effect on the body. So they, they're really described as functional mushrooms, and they've been used in traditional Chinese medicine for thousands of years for their nutritive effects and their adaptogenic effects. So I'm sure there's lots of herbalists listening who are very familiar with the term adaptogen, but they help the body adapt to stress and adapt to modern life. And there's just nothing really like it. There's lots of adaptogenic herbs, but I really feel medicinal mushrooms are so powerful at modulating the immune system and the immune response. So they have an effect on our emotional, mental state. They have a really great effect on our gastrointestinal health because they're prebiotics and give us a good amount of fiber and help with dysbiosis in the gut and enrich our microbiota. And then that has a knock-on effect on so many other parts of the body. Their immune modulation is great with things like COVID, with modulating the cytokine storm. They're also antiviral. So a lot of research was done during the pandemic on their antiviral effect. They can help with envelope viruses, things like the cold sore virus, which a lot of people can be affected by. So they're very good antivirals as well, particularly cordyceps and reishi. They're good for oncology, for mitigating the side effects of perhaps conventional cancer treatment. They're even good for musculoskeletal health, but I think the main ones are gastrointestinal, stress, mental and emotional, antiviral, immune support.
Yeah. And obviously all of those have knock-on effects, as you kind of said as well. So once you start fixing, say, a certain issue, that the body as a whole kind of, you reap the benefits, so to say. But I'd love to know a bit more about that. So how does it kind of specifically work? You kind of mentioned adaptogens, but perhaps for listeners that don't know anything, just starting from scratch, maybe, how would you kind of explain how it works?
I think the main thing to remember is they have key bioactive compounds. So a lot of people talk about the polysaccharide count. So you really need to know not only the percentage of polysaccharides in your medicinal mushroom product, but really go a bit deeper and look at the beta glucans. And it's actually the 1 in 3,16 chain beta glucans that bring about this biological response. So they're known as BRMs, biological response modifiers, and they interact with the Peyer's patches and the lymph tissue to modulate the immune system, so they can activate it more, and they can also suppress it, which is really useful in autoimmune conditions as well. So they work, it's a tricky concept to understand, but they work in the individual on a case-by-case basis, which makes them really safe to take, because in a lot of individuals, you don't actually want to be stimulating the immune system all the time. You don't want to overstimulate it, and things like echinacea can be amazing in the short term, but you don't want to be stimulating it in the long term. So medicinal mushrooms are very safe to take in the long term. So it's really knowing that there's a good standardized amount of beta glucans in the product.
Wow, that's so interesting. And I guess it's kind of in the name, isn't it? Adaptogens means they kind of adapt to each individual body. And I know in regards to women's health, so you kind of touched on the general points, but also how does that kind of relate to specifically fertility for women, for example?
Well, I guess there's so many different ways that medicinal mushrooms can support fertility issues. I think, one of the most well-known mushrooms for not only female fertility, but also male fertility is cordyceps, or Cordyceps sinensis is the strain we use at Hifas da Terra, because it oxygenates the body. So it's all about cellular oxygenation, and it has a natural affinity and tropism for the reproductive organs. So in men, this can be great for things like ED, getting the oxygen there. And in women, it can be great for tissue oxygenation, repair, recovery, healing, pain. Cordyceps also has a hormone modulating effect, as does reishi. So I think cordyceps is probably the most well-known mushroom for female fertility and male fertility. But then there are some other really important mushrooms. So as I mentioned at the start, reishi Ganoderma lucidum is known as the mushroom of immortality or eternal youth. It's very pro-aging, and it's very antioxidant and anti-inflammatory. So with a lot of females, and again, I don't want to generalize, but often they can be extremely stressed, and that can throw their hormones out of whack. And if they're not sleeping properly and they're very anxious about getting pregnant, you just need to bring them back into like a parasympathetic state so the body can heal, they
Yeah.
can sleep, their hormones can rebalance. And reishi's amazing hormone modulator. So we would definitely use reishi and cordyceps
Yeah.
side by side for female fertility, and it actually regulates the HPA axis and the central nervous system. So it's antioxidant, anti-inflammatory effect as well.
Yeah.
That really helps um, alongside the cordyceps. And I think, you know, according to traditional Chinese medicine, cordyceps stimulates the energy of the kidney, which is considered the reservoir of the vital energy that we were born with. And if we boost the energy of the kidney, this stimulates the reproductive functions from libido to fertility, from virility to ovulation to fertilization and implantation of the zygote or the fertilized eggs to the endometrium. So it's really about cordyceps enhancing cellular energy production and oxygenation, which can support this overall energy and vitality, which really supports the reproductive system.
Oh, that's really, really interesting. And I think, yeah, that's definitely really, really cool. And I guess, correct me so I say the names wrong
Mm.
as well, but the reishi one that you spoke about, would
Mm.
that be potentially good for people going through hormonal changes or hormonal imbalance, such as like PCOS or like menopause and things like that then?
Absolutely, yeah. Reishi would be the one we turn to as our first choice for like the perimenopause,
Okay.
menopause phases,
Mm.
because it has this anti-inflammatory, antioxidant
Mm.
effect. It also has this analgesic effect. So if there's any like cramping or pain or PMS or anything like that, it will really help calm and soothe. So
Mm.
yeah, reishi is the number one. But it's interesting you talked about PCOS, which can be a big issue for fertility. And that's when we would actually look at a mushroom called maitake or Grifola frondosa, which is great in overcoming fertility challenges caused by PCOS, and perhaps people who are on the higher end of the weight spectrum and want to balance weight
Mm-hmm.
in order to get pregnant. So research shows extracts from maitake reduce insulin resistance and normalize glucose levels,
Oh, wow.
um, and also balance lipids in the body, improving fertility for women and those with PCOS or those who might be on the higher end of the weight scale. And it actually promotes normal ovulation. Um, so it balances androgen levels, which are often high in
Mm.
PCOS and can disrupt normal ovulation. So yeah, I would definitely think about maitake if you have any clients with
Mm.
PCOS. And actually, Hifas da Terra do a really great product called Myco Mix, which is a combination of reishi, maitake, and shiitake.
Yeah.
So that would work beautifully for PCOS and
Mm.
also for women going through the perimenopause, menopause stage who suddenly find they can't shift that extra weight and it
Mm.
might be getting them down or their metabolism slows down. Myco Mix is a really great formula for that. Yeah.
Oh, that's so interesting. We had an episode the other week about PCOS, and then we spoke about a lot of these things like the insulin resistance, high androgen. So to know that you can kind of take something that may potentially help with that, I think is really, really cool. And I think something that, yeah, listeners will definitely be really interested in. And so that's the kind of, you kind of spoke about specific ones for the PCOS, for fertility, and we kind of spoke a little bit about menopause. Are there any other specific ones that you would kind of recommend for people that are
Yeah.
entering perimenopause or menopause?
So we have We have a product called Hifas Equilibrium, which is a new product, which is a combination of reishi, so Ganoderma lucidum, lion's mane, so Hericium merinaceus, and Cordyceps sinensis. And this works beautifully to balance the emotional and hormonal side of things. So you've got the cordyceps to give you that energy boost, and if your libido's dropped off a bit, that will really help. But then you've got the lion's mane to work on the gut brain axis, so it improves mood, it improves digestion. If a bit of kind of mental clarity is needed, the lion's mane's going to help there. And also it will work beautifully with the reishi. Reishi and lion's mane synergize really well. So if there is more stress and anxiety, reishi will also help with sleep. And a lot of women struggle with night sweats and broken sleep. And reishi has absolutely amazing effects on sleep. So I would say Hifas Equilibrium is a good one to turn to if you're kind of ready to start looking at, you think you might be entering perimenopause. I think those three mushrooms together work really well. But just going back to maitake and fertility, I just wanted to mention all medicinal mushrooms are gentle detoxifiers. And as a medical herbalist, I like to come in and work with women who might be thinking about getting pregnant and wanting to prepare themselves at least 6 months in advance. And we would often suggest a detox, because with all of the contaminants and pollutants and heavy metals, maitake could work brilliantly. And we would start with a gentle detox to kind of eliminate any of those endocrine disruptors. So if women have been having a lot of fish in their diet, they might have high levels of mercury. And we did some interesting tests on a combination of two mushrooms, so maitake and polyporus. So polyporus isn't so well known, but it works beautifully on the lymph system. So very good if you're holding on to water, or even if you get UTIs. It's a natural potassium sparing diuretic. So polyporus umbellatus is an important one for women's health, actually. And maitake and polyporus together are a great combination for detoxification. So that can be really helpful in cases of infertility, just to get rid of any of those endocrine disruptors, and then go on to more of the fertility boosting herbs after the detox.
Yeah, I guess detox is kind of, as a word, is like thrown around quite a lot in like media and things like that. So with your kind of detox, what do you kind of just like specifically mean for that?
So I'm referring to a heavy metal detox. So I'm looking at maitake and polyporus for their chelating effects. So we did tests on the hair, mercury in hair, and heavy metals in the blood to show a reduction in the hair and the blood. So I'm very much thinking of it in terms of a heavy metal detox, which is quite a unique area, because I don't think there are any other tests with medicinal mushrooms showing that they have that chelating effect. So that's, again, a new study that we released this year, that, again, it's going to take time to filter out into the general.
No, definitely. I think also that's one of the great things about you guys, that you seem to be doing so many different tests and studies just to really prove the point that this is kind of really important and all the different benefits. Could you tell me a bit more about some of maybe the tests or like studies that you've done that have been, that you've, and what you've kind of found from them, just so we can kind of, if someone was maybe a bit skeptical, and then you can give them a bit of evidence base for it.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the greatest studies that we refer to in terms of reishi, Ganoderma lucidum. So that is really the mushroom that is so useful for women's health, for stress, anxiety, sleep, menopause, perimenopause. So We did a study called the Reishi study, which showed a reduction in stress, anxiety, and depression. So this was on different people's reactions to sleep and wakefulness, so the sleep cycle, and also how mycotherapy can initiate the hypothalamus by activating the stress pathways, so the SAM axis and the HPA axis. And we had really good results showing its hypnotic and sedative effects on the central nervous system, showing it significantly reduces motility, shortening sleep latency, and increasing sleep time. So again, you can request this study off us. And again, another really important study that shows the safety of medicinal mushrooms is a study called the Medina trial, which shows no significant interactions with concentrated extracts of Hifas da Terra's medicinal mushroom products and the drug liver pathway. So this gives people peace of mind taking medicinal mushrooms maybe alongside other medications. So that's another really important study that, again, we can send you. We have ongoing clinical trials. So we have one currently on breast cancer and one on colorectal cancer, just to show the immune modulating effects of the mushrooms and the effect on the microbiota. We'll have a study at the end of the year coming out on Lyme's disease, which is really interesting. And yeah, then the detox study this year as well, as I mentioned. So I think we have 15 ongoing clinical studies.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. I think that's so great because obviously, I mean, you can see it from your own personal experience and your own lived experience of dealing with yourself and also clients with it. But I think for people because there's so much information out in the world nowadays, especially in the health space, I think having that passion towards those clinical trials that you are so clearly investing in, I think is really important, and also just really reassuring, I think, for people that are contemplating it or worried about, as you said, maybe the interactions. But studies like that, I think, is so important, I think. Yeah, so well done for that, at least.
Yeah. I think the one thing to look out for if people are kind of venturing into the medicinal mushroom world and don't know where to start or what to look out for, I would say always check the labels to make sure it's a certified organic product, because mushrooms are like sponges, they're chelators. So if there's any pollutants or runoff in the soil, then that mushroom would naturally pick it up and become a toxic product. So always check for that they're not just saying it's organic, but the certification is there, and then that it's a GMP certified product, so that they're doing all of the tests and there's complete transparency along the manufacturing process. And the final thing to look out for, I know I mentioned at the beginning, you've got to find out the percentage of beta glucans in the product to make sure it's a standardized amount to bring about that therapeutic effect. But I think a lot of people don't know that mushrooms can be grown on grain because it's quick and fast and cheap. So what you want to look for is a mushroom grown on wood. So you want to avoid an MOG, a mushroom on grain product, because it would be a starchy product that could potentially bloat you or feed candida or dysbiosis. And you need to look for a product that's been grown on wood or wood chips. So medicinal mushrooms grow on wood naturally in the wild. And so Hifas da Terra products are all grown on wood, with the exception of our Cordyceps sinensis, which is grown in an algae bioreactor. That's a whole other story. But you do want to make sure it's a non-MOG product, because when people come to me and they say, oh, we've tried medicinal mushrooms, but it didn't work, I'll say, well, it was probably a mushroom on grain product which won't have the percentage of bioactive compounds that you need in particularly the beta glucans to bring about the therapeutic effect. So I think that's an important thing for people to know about.
No, that's really important. I think particularly with all kind of marketing these days, it's really easy to suddenly ship or sell something as a particular having all these benefits and not actually be the correct way or the correct formulation.
Yeah.
So are those the only things you would say to look for in a medicinal mushroom product?
I guess so. Certified organic, standardized amount of bioactive compounds. So make sure they're not just saying the percentage of polysaccharides, but they're saying the percentage of beta glucans and things like the triterpenes in reishi. They are going to bring about the calming effect. So responsible brands will actually list the percentage of bioactive compounds and then that it's GMP certified. And because mushrooms need to be taken for at least 2 months daily to bring about that therapeutic effect, you don't want any nasty fillers or anything like that in there. So you want it to be a vegetable capsule if it's in a capsule form, or you want it to be an organic micronized powder with no fillers, you know, so that it's good for celiacs, lactose intolerant, and that there's going to be nothing else in there that's going to build up over time. I think that's important as well.
No, definitely. I think that's really useful for anyone looking at it. And I guess that's super, super useful. And so we've kind of spoken about different stages of, say, like a woman's life, but I guess we haven't really spoken about, say, if you're pregnant or breastfeeding. And I know people can be a bit cautious. So I was just, it would be great to know if functional mushrooms are safe to use for anyone at any stage of life.
Sure, that's a really good question. So number one is you need to make sure that there's no pre-existing culinary mushroom allergy. So that's really important. And obviously, if you're an adult, you've probably tried culinary mushrooms and you know, but if you're working with children, you need to make sure the parent has tried the child on a culinary mushroom first. And then there aren't actually any studies or research done on pregnant and breastfeeding women with concentrated extracts. So we would err on the side of caution and not recommend the concentrated extracts when someone is actually pregnant. We would ask them to stick to the organic micronized powders because they're like functional foods. So, you know, if a woman has mushrooms in their diet anyway, they can have the powders and that's fine. If someone is sensitive to high amounts of fiber, we would say, you know, go easy on the powders, particularly in the early stages of pregnancy or for implantation. You don't want to overstimulate the digestion with too much fiber, but you generally start on the concentrated extracts 6 months before you're pregnant, and then when you start actively trying for a baby, go onto the micronized organic powders. So we have them in superfood form, and we also have biointestin and biodefense in capsule form, which are not concentrated extracts. So if you need immune support or digestive support, you could continue with them, and that's the same for breastfeeding. And then when you're no longer breastfeeding, you can go back onto the concentrated extracts, but of course have mushrooms in your diet 3 times a week in broths, in soups, you know, that will help. And the powders can be added to smoothies and yogurt and hot drinks. You can take reishi at night time to help you sleep, but then you would want to take the cordyceps powder morning and midday. You probably wouldn't want to take it past midday, latest 4 p.m. in case it's a bit too stimulating. But reishi you can take in the evening, no problem. And lion's mane you can take any time of day, that's fine.
Oh, okay, cool. That's really, really useful, I think, for people listening, not knowing whether it's the right option for them or not. I think,
Mm.
yeah, that's really, really informative. And you've kind of given a whistle-stop tour of all the different ways that it's beneficial for women's health. So I think that's really, really useful for all of our listeners, whoever's listening. And I wanted to say thank you very much for that as we kind of draw to the end. And as we kind of, yeah, draw to the end, is there anything else that you wanted to add? Anything that you want to say? Of course, I'll tag all your socials, everything below, so people can go and have a look at your site and the Hifas da Terra site as
Yeah.
well.
Of course, I think if you're kind of venturing into the medicinal mushroom world, start off with a product like reishi or mycorrhea, so a
Mhm.
concentrated extract, and see how you feel. And then if you want the more energizing effects, cordyceps sinensis is incredible, and lion's mane is super, super popular. So again, for mental focus and emotional health, mental clarity, and digestive issues, lion's mane is fantastic. But I would like to say that they synergize so well with herbs. So don't think you have to do one or the other. They
Mm.
really harmonize. They harmonize a formula. You can, if you're taking herbal medicine, you can add medicinal mushroom capsules, no problem at all. We ask with Hifas da Terra products that you just space them out by an hour from any other medications you might be on, just because we work so hard on the bioavailability of the product. We don't want something else coming in and affecting it.
Yeah.
So our recommendation is to take the medicinal mushroom product first thing in the morning on an empty stomach, and then you can take whatever else you might be taking an hour later.
Mm. Oh, that's brilliant. And yeah, I think this is a great entry point for so many people who may want to know a bit more. I mean, it's, as we said earlier, it's such a hot topic, but I think this is a really great way for people to kind of learn a bit more and kind of can go off and have a little research on other things as well once they've kind of, yeah, used this. So thank you so, so much for coming onto the show.
No worries. It's so nice to talk about the subject. And obviously, women's health is such a wide subject, and we focus
Mm.
today on fertility, but we are constantly digging into, skin, uh,
Mm.
digestive health, all of these different issues. So, if there's a subject that we haven't touched on, like even UTIs or recurring UTIs or anything like that that can plague women and they haven't found an answer yet, then
Mm.
definitely find a practitioner who works with medicinal mushrooms, because it could just unlock something and make a difference to whatever their current protocol is.
Absolutely. I feel like we've only just scratched the surface of this topic, but thank you so much.
Have a great day, Jess.
You too. Have a lovely day. Bye.